Well, welcome everyone to Cisco's Virtual Kitchen. We're back. Little Butcher.
Good morning.
Good morning, Taryn.
Good
Welcome.
morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm not crackly.
Not that I've heard so far.
Okay, no crackly. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna just turn it over to you. What are we doing today with the Little
Awesome.
Butcher?
So yeah, this morning we're gonna work on some more of the Butcher's Block Angus Reserve. So the same brand that we did the last time as well. So the Butcher's Block Angus is a triple A, 100% Canadian beef. It's sourced from manufactured in only one plant in the High River Cargill plant. So yeah, lots of consistency. We saw that in the last time when we were cutting the ribeyes and the strip loins. Very consistent product, consistent sizing, consistent marbling, consistent grading, which is like so important for someone in the food biz. So we're going to start with the inside round this morning, or top round. We're going to just start by completely trimming up the top of it. So for someone in food service, so particularly in restaurants, this is a great roast cut for doing, like roast beef plate service, or a roast beef to slice and do beef dips or sandwiches of any kind. This cut particularly, as opposed to the bottom round or bottom flat, is good because it has a very consistent grain. So you can even, I don't know if you can see right now, but it's kind of starting to show the grain underneath all this fat here, but it runs in one direction basically, which is very easy to slice up after it's been cooked. Yeah, so some other ones, the bottom flat kind of ends up having two pieces where the grain one's one way, and then it kind of turns and starts going in the other direction. So for someone who's maybe a little newer to the kitchen, learning how to slice that may take a little bit more time. It might be a little bit more risky for the business owner or the chef to have new people slicing those after they've been cooked and are ready for service. So yeah, so this guy, we're gonna trim up the fat and trim up all the silver skin and stuff on the top. I am gonna keep the nice pieces of fat off to the side here, because that will be great for the cooking of it. All right, so the top is basically cleaned up. Yeah.
Taryn, you said nice pieces. Is there bad pieces of fat?
I mean, the thinner pieces of fat, right, that are like this here,
Yeah.
I wouldn't get much use out of that, right? I wouldn't call that a good piece of fat, I guess, but a nice kind of thick piece of fat that you can lay on top of the roast, and then as it's cooking, you'll get all the drippings and stuff off of that. So yeah, and then there's some fat that's just not as nice of a texture. So okay, so we are just gonna flip it over now, clean the entire bottom as well. So this is kind of the boring part, I guess you could say. But as I'm doing this, I'm going to try to start about 2/3 of the way down the piece, and then I can kind of cut the last third towards myself. You maybe don't want to cut towards yourself as often, of course. So the more you can cut away and down, the better. We'll get all this cleaned up. And then there's a bit of a vein, I would say, is the hardest part on this piece to cut, is the vein that's kind of in the back of it. And after it's cooked, it does get very tough. So you really do want to clean that vein out of it. So I'd say that's the biggest thing, besides just the trimming of the outsides, which is fairly easy. That's the biggest thing that you want to take care of. So if I can show you, there's kind of this V at the top there. So that's where that vein or artery will sit. Yeah, so we're just going to kind of follow that fat and this seam here, and we can take this basically right out just by following that.
Now, Taryn, I have a question for you. Yeah. So that's the vein right there. That's the one. You can't do anything with it, or what do you do with that?
It's not nice. I mean, I can trim this up and get a little bit of trimmings for grinding, or you could put that into your making broth or soup, right? Because you'll get the flavor from that. But that's not edible. It's so thick and it just toughens up as it cooks. So you definitely don't want to be cooking that into it and having someone accidentally slicing it up and throwing it on the customer's plate. That's a big no-no right there. Okay, so then the next thing we're gonna do is remove the cap that sits on top of the round. So you can see there's a bit of a seam here and a cap here. So I'm gonna start at the end where this chunk of fat is. I'm just gonna kind of open it up, and then we're gonna kind of start seaming it, they say. So I'm gonna run my knife slowly, and as I pull up, I'll be able to see just some little bits of fat loosening, and I'll keep running my knife just along that to remove this whole cap. And on the end, once we kind of start getting to the end, it'll turn into a little bit of a meatier piece. I'll show you after I get it off. But that
can I ask you a quick question there? That knife technique you're doing, I don't see that all the time. What is that? Like, tell us a little more about that.
So that's just the practice of seaming. So like every muscle that's attached on the cow is gonna have a seam somewhere. So when you get to know all those parts, and you do more whole animal butchery, it's just so easy to be able to do that. So just like hacking through different cuts. Nice. And it really does. You'll hear it when we do the sirloin a bit more too, but it almost just you could almost pull some of the things apart. So it's made to come apart that way basically, and then you just use the knife to just help you get it all the way apart. So it's good. So with the cap here, so we have the cap, but there's also a bit of the round meat on there. Some butchers might refer to this as like the loose meat. And I can see again, there's a bit of a seam here. So that's where the cap will separate from that meat. And I'm just gonna cut that separate there. So now we have a little bit more trim. Again, this is great for doing burgers or any kind of grinds. We get heavy on our trim here. It's good. And then the cap. So what we do with the cap here at the shop is pound it out really good. We'll trim both sides really clean, pound it out real flat, and then stuff it with like a cheese mixture. So we do like a Florentine mixture, which is spinach and artichokes and cream cheese and some Parmesan cheese, and then we'll roll it up to a nice piece and then tie it, and we get some nice little pinwheels. So I actually did a couple earlier just so we could see, but after we've cleaned it and pounded it thin and put the stuffing in it, it makes these beautiful little portion pinwheels. So for food service, this could be kind of hard because you only maybe get 5 or 6 out of one piece. But that could be a fun little appetizer. That's a new thing on a menu. It's really great in a butcher shop too, though, because someone can buy just 2 for their dinner at home, and they're happy with that. So that's a fun way to use up the cap. You could also do stir fries with it. It has a really nice grain again, like we're talking about with the roast. So stir fries would be good with it, or stewing meat as well. Not as big on it for kebabs because it can be a little bit thinner, but really great for stir fries or fajitas. All right, so the last part of the inside round then is we're going to cut it into a few roasts. So I think depending on what you're using it for, you can either cut this into 2 or 3. 2 would obviously give you some bigger slices, wider slices. So maybe if you're doing it on a hoagie bun or something that's a little bit longer and you want to do a nice beef dip, you could just cut it in half and string it. But we'll cut it into 3 today, so we kind of get 3 even pieces. And so that's really easy for someone to cut. We'll string 1 just so we can see. But then that makes a nice easy slice after for the line cooks and the people who are going to be serving it. So 1 last little bit of trimming. So then we'll take the string. It doesn't have to be a proper butcher's knot, as long as it gets it nice and tight around it. We'll probably just do 5 or 6. My first one didn't go there, of course. We'll just do 5 or 6 knots, and this will also help to even the piece out a little bit. You can see it kind of tapers off the end there, so we want to try to even it out as best as possible to get a nice even cooking on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or else, yeah, you'll end up with one end that's a little bit more well done, one end that's a little bit more medium rare, which might be okay if you're doing beef dips and stuff, because you'll probably dip it in the jus and it'll cook itself a little bit too, which is delicious. Watching that intro commercial made me a little bit hungry. There was lots of good steak cuts on it. I was like, oh, it's turning out to be a sunny day. Maybe we'll have to have a little lunch barbecue, I think.
So Taryn, when you're tying that,
Mm-hmm.
is there some things that people do wrong when they're tying beef?
I think just depending on the cut, either being too loose or too tight. Like you don't want to be able to really, I can't stick my finger underneath this knot. So on a cut that's a little bit more sturdy, like the leg cuts, you want to tie it nice and tight, again, like I was saying, to help it even out. But when you're tying something like a tenderloin, if you're going to tie that, you want to be so gentle, because if you yank on a tenderloin, you can almost pull right through it. So you don't want to be doing that with something that's a little bit more fragile and tender. So, okay, so we have the piece, we have our roast here. I'm going to trim just a little bit off of the end because it's a little uneven, like I was saying, but just enough there. Again, you could use that for stew or grinds. It's beautiful grinds to add with your fat. And yeah, we have nice, beautiful tied roast. So after it's cooked, remove the strings, and then the cooks and line cooks can just follow the lines that are still left on it for slicing, and then you'll have a beautiful, beautiful roast beefs there. All right. So yeah, and the other thing, sorry, I was saying about the fat, right? So if you're going to cook it, I would personally just lay the fat on top. I wouldn't tie it on, because then if you've seasoned it or anything, you're going to lose the seasoning when you take the fat off, right? So I would season the roast, tie it up, and then just laying the fat on top. And then it'll get all the juices, all the drippings. If you want to make your gravy afterwards, get everything out of it there, which would be tasty and delicious. We've actually had quite a few people coming in and just buying pounds of fat to just be eating. Apparently it's a part of the carnivore diet. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yes. They sear it with salt and pepper, and away they go.
Well, we've made every other kind of meat usable, right? Like we've why not
the fat? Why not? Right? Exactly. All right, so we're going to move on to the top sirloin. This is also known as the rump in some areas, in some countries. It's beautiful cut. It's very versatile. The rump side of the cow, it's just on top of the leg, at the end of the short loin. It makes it a long loin having this touch. So it's got a few different muscles that we can seam out, again, like we were talking about, and create a few different value adds for our restaurants. So yeah, again, we're going to start by just cleaning up the bottom of it. There's definitely some silver skin here along the bottom, and some kind of bigger chunks of fat or pockets of fat.
Now, silver skin is completely useless.
Yeah, I again, like we use it at the shop for our broths. So we'll basically anything that we won't grind. So something like this, maybe has the tiniest little bit of nice red meat on it, but it's mostly just silver skin. We'll throw that into our broth just for a little color and flavor, along with some beautiful bones. But other than that, maybe dogs might want it, or dog food. It might be good for dog food, but yeah, not really edible for humans. Not enjoyably edible, I guess you could say. Okay, so I cleaned up the bottom a little bit. Next, we're going to remove a couple little muscles that sit on top. They're referred to sometimes as like the mouse meat of the steak. So I like to start kind of down at the bottom here. There's a little bit of a seam, again, seaming that runs inside. I try to use just a smaller knife when I'm seaming usually, so I don't accidentally make a big gash into it where I don't want to. So I'm just taking off the first little muscle here.
What kind of knife are you using there, Taryn, for that?
I use a 6-inch stick knife, and it's I usually use a firm knife. There's really flexible ones. and they're semi-flexible ones. But I like the firmer ones. But it's just a pretty average knife that you can get at any food equipment store or butcher supply store. Yeah, very handy to have. Yeah.
Very
okay,
cool.
so yeah, I've taken the first little piece of the mouse meat off, the little muscle. I don't love this very much. I would usually grind this. I have heard people say it's similar to maybe a beef cheek, where it's nice and grained, lots of striations there, and it's good to be slow braised. But if you're gonna make a dish for a restaurant out of this, you probably need 10 or 20 of those, depending on how much you go through, right? So you could play with it a bit and test it out, braise it, and try maybe make like a grilled cheese sandwich with a braised sirloin mouse meat. I don't know if you want to call it mouse meat, but anyways, I would just turn this for grind myself usually. The next piece, however, that we're going to take off is a little bit nicer. So again, it's just another small muscle that sits on top. Again, we're going to seam, so I'm pulling at the meat and then just cutting where the fat meets the meat, or the silver skin meets the meat. So this one is just a nice little piece. It only really has the silver skin on the top and the bottom. So this one, to me, is a nice one for kebabs or stir fry for sure. Again, if you wanted to use it to maybe like grill and then put it on top of salads, you just need quite a few of them. So if you're going through a lot of sirloins, I think you have a little bit more options there than if you're going through maybe 10 or 12 butts a week, right? But then that's only 10 or 12 salads still. So it's not a lot. But for me today, we're going to just cube this up, and we're going to put it onto some skewers at the end. But yeah, we want to remove all the silver skin that's there. We don't really want to leave anything on. And we'll try to make our skewer sizes even as possible, of course. All right, so we got a little bit of skewer meat there, kebab meat there. All right, so next we're going to remove the kanya, or the coulette, or the sirloin cap, or the rump cap. It's fun that there's so many different names for everything. But you can see here again this kind of nice strip of fat in the middle. We're going to seam this apart. And this one, like I was saying, you can almost just pull. I don't know if you can hear that crackling. That's very satisfying sound. So you can pull it mostly apart, and then you can kind of see it's like almost like spider webby looking in there. Yeah. So I'm just gonna just run my knife gently down there, and it'll just basically break itself apart. So
really,
now we have the two pieces. Yeah. So that's again another great example of the seaming. So we'll work on our cap for a minute then. Beautiful cut. Tasty, just as being part of the rump, is delicious and flavorful. It has this nice cap of fat on the top, which again, I love. Makes it nice and flavorful, will give you that juiciness. And it almost can look like a little New York strip loin. It's almost like a mock, right? Almost like a mock New York strip loin. So what we'll just do is trim the silver skin and the gristle.
It almost looks like Long Island.
Yeah, there's so many different.
It looks like Long Island from the sky.
In the steak world, we'll call it. There you go.
We'll call it Long Island. There, we just
rename it again. Yeah, we'll have a 12th name for this cut then, which is great.
Now, Taryn, do you see sometimes people not taking the top off and just cutting steaks out of it that way?
Not as much lately, but definitely. Yeah, that used to be a thing they would do for sure. And maybe a little bit more in grocery stores and some of the bigger grocery stores. But more of the smaller boutique grocery stores and butcher shops. I would hope no one's cutting the whole thing. You can see that when it's together. Sorry, I should have shown this before, but the grains run in all different directions. So this cap, the grains running this way, you have grains this way. So if you were to just slice this, it would be a very poor eating experience for the customer because they would, right? They wouldn't know which way to cut it. So it'd be very hard for the customer to decipher what they were doing with it and to actually have a good experience with it. So separating them out is the best way to go because you'll have the best eating experience. I will as well quickly say about the sirloin. So the Butcher's Block Reserve Angus. A few of the cuts have the certified tender as well. I know we talked about that quickly the last time too, but for me as a business owner, you know, you're a restaurant owner, the consistency of a product is so important, and it's so much nicer when it's consistent, right? And you know your customer is going to have a good eating experience every time if it has a certified tender quality, as well as being like the AAA and the top 2/3 of the AAA. So this product, I think, would just like take the ease out of it, and you wouldn't be worried, you know, about what you're serving. So beautiful cuts, and yeah, nice marbling in there. So we're gonna start cutting the picanha or the coulette or the sirloin cap against the grain. We always want to cut against the grain. I'm just gonna do about 1-inch slices. You can see this beautiful cap of fat here. To your preference, you know, you trim off a little bit of it. These ones may be slightly harder to portion, so you may want to have 2 sizes on your menu, or if you get a big enough one, yeah, you could definitely, let me see what these are weighing at. You could definitely cut some of the bigger ones in half if you want to make a smaller one. So they'll have bigger sizes, so that's about 12 ounces, and then the smallers is about 8 ounces, so that's not bad actually. But yeah, so I would probably trim off some of this fat, but that's part of the sirloin cap, is that it's going to have this beautiful fat cap on it, so you don't want to go too heavy. So I trimmed it down a little bit there. It still has, you know, 1/3 of an inch, almost even half an inch, because I just love the fat on it. But that's what you want those to look like in the end. Save your fat for your burgers or your bolognese, etc. And then the end of the cap, I'm just going to trim off of the fat here. And we're going to use that as well for kebabs. So out of this whole sirloin piece, we'll kind of have a couple different muscles working together to create our kebabs in the end, but you'll still get a few nice little pieces. And when I was playing with it the other day and just thinking about how we could show versatility in these cuts, I kind of decided more so doing like a smaller kebab. So more maybe an appetizer kebab would be good, because you never know how much you're gonna get out of it. So making a bigger kebab, you know, maybe you only get 5 big kebabs out of it, but you could get 10, you know, appetizer size kebabs. So all right, so moving on, I'll move those picanhas in just a second. We're gonna finish cleaning. So you really want to clean, again, all the silver skin off of the top of here, and most of the fat as well. In a butcher shop, you could maybe decide if you want to leave some of them with a little bit more fat, but I think if you're going for consistency in a restaurant, having it all trimmed will just make it way easier. Okay, so we have our cap we've cut up now. Wait for my little board here. Cap, which way they look good. So now we're moving on to the center. So we're still going to seam this down one more time. You can kind of see again, there's a bit of a line running down this piece. And this is going to make a little like eye, or I heard some people saying that they called it like a sirloin chateau, like a chateaubriand, which is with the tenderloin, but with sirloin. So once we seam this apart, we'll kind of get one nice little piece, and then we'll have the bigger center after as well. So for this one, yeah, this one works a little differently for cutting. So if you're doing the sirloins and you're trying to separate them, I'm going to almost use my knife to push the meat down. So there's a line of silver skin that runs through. I'm just going to find it at the top here, and I'm going to push my knife sideways while cutting a little bit to kind of unveil this piece of silver skin in there. So we're slowly just going to push the meat and slice a little bit. And once I get down to the bottom, then I can slice right through. So now we have 2 pieces. So you can see here we've revealed this nice bit of silver skin there. Again, it's not going to have as nice of a eating quality and eating texture. So if you can separate them, I think that's better. I'll trim this up take off the silver skin. And now this piece makes beautiful baseball steaks again too.
Okay.
So, it's nicely sized. It's nice and round. It's nice and even. So baseball steaks out of this guy are beautiful. And I think you can get 3 or 4, I'd say, out of it. So yeah, one nice little piece. Nice and even. Nice size. I also actually sent this home with one of my employees for Easter. At Christmas, she had wanted to do a beef tenderloin, a Wellington, but we sold out. And I told her if we sold out over Easter, that I'd give her one of these to take home to try. Because to me, it's a beautiful cut. It's so lean in the middle. Of course, it has some nice marbling, but there's no big chunks of fat or gristle running through it. So she tried it as a Wellington, and she said it worked wonderfully. So, right, that's good to know, right? Something like this that's it's definitely not a tenderloin. It's definitely not tenderloin pricing. Can be, just as good or tender.
Very cool.
Yeah. So versatile, right? Like maybe you could cut this into some, maybe not baseball size, but maybe 1.5 inch pieces and do some portioned Wellingtons out of it. You don't have to say that it has beef tenderloin in it. You can say in the description that it has sirloin, chateau sirloin in it, or the sirloin eye in it or something to make it sound nice. But yeah, you don't have to lie about what you're serving and just call it something nice. But okay, so I tied this just to keep it that nice round shape, so when we cut our baseballs, they don't fall flat. I want it to be nice and thick. So I got three nice big ones out of that there. And then of course I'll have my little bit of kebabby meat here too.
The kebabby.
Right. Kebabby meat. I think I lost my kebab sticks as well, but that's okay. So for our baseball cut sirloins, that's about 11 ounces there. And we're about 10 and 10. So if you're aiming for something about 10 ounces, it's like 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. Nice baseball cut there. So that's a beautiful cut to have on the menu.
Ooh.
A little harder to cook though, of course, right? Like that one, you'll have to probably start it in a pan or on the grill and then finish it in the oven to get it at the consistency or the temperature that the customer is looking for. But beautiful, delicious, tasty, tender, lean, lots of good selling points. So last piece we have here is, so the center of the sirloin now. I have a little bit of trimming still to do. There's still some fat and some gristle on the back. And then the back end of it as well. I don't know how I see, but there is a lot of connective tissues and gristle and silver skin in the middle here. So you will lose maybe 1.5 inches off the end of that, but you can get some more kebabby meat out of it. So don't worry too much. So we'll clean up the last little bit of silver skin on the outside. And then I have seen as well, if you really are selling a lot of baseball cuts, and they seem to be going good, cut this in half again. You get 2 more, right? 2 more pieces that are about the same size, and cut them the same way. But it's all trimmed up on the bottom. There's not going to be a lot of gristle. We've taken most of it out except for just that end piece. So yeah, you'll get some really nice baseball cuts if you continue to do it that way. We will cut a slightly different steak. Sometimes you want it to look wider on the plate, maybe to like take up more of the plate space. So we could aim for a slightly bigger piece of meat, maybe visually to someone that looks bigger than this, even though it's probably almost the same size weight wise, but that's just a nice look for a nice plate. So we can cut these ones straight down, just doing these ones about 1 inch. And then, like I said, we will have to leave a bit on the end because then it starts getting into more of the gristle and silver skin down here. It's not going to be as nice of eating there. So that can be all for kebabs. But we got 4 beautiful steaks here, right? Like I was saying, not any gristle or extra silver skin running through them. Just the marbling, just the nice marbling that they have in them. So that's a beautiful steak cover or plate covering steak. That was either even 12 ounces. So yeah, if you're looking for a smaller one, cut those in half again too, and then you'll have, 2 6-ouncers. Also a nice, beautiful little size. That would be great for me. That's all I really need most of the time. Great salad steak, to serve on top of a salad. So lots of options for this then. Got some bigger 12 ounces, a couple of nice 6-ouncers, and then we'll get into our kebabs last. I might have to call someone and see if they can bring me my kebab sticks. All right. So yeah, just again, when we're talking about doing your own butchering in-house, there is more to think about, right? Than just, I want to cut my own steaks. Because if you can't use what you've cut off, then you're in trouble. With something like the sirloin, the yield can be like 50%, sometimes only 40%. So you're losing quite a bit. Exactly. But if you're smart, like I said, if you're using this to make a more flavorful broth, if you can use the fat on top of your roast or grind it into your burgers, and then trying to do, a good amount of kebabs out of it, or your stir fry or your fajitas, so just having that plan, right? Yeah. So the last little bit here for trimming, I'll get a couple pieces off of this end. But yeah, I have a good amount of kebab meat here, right? But like I was saying, depending how many you're going through, you could make it an entree and have some bigger skewers. But when I was looking at it, I just thought, like, what a great way to have an appy, maybe having like 3 different marinades. So you have 3 little skewers. Hey, Kenzie. She's just not going to hear me. She has her headphones in too. Okay. Okay. We can probably just imagine what this would look like. But I would say, honestly, just putting a few little pieces onto each stick. You get 3 little. There's 3, and I have 3. So how many kebab are we gonna get out of this? 3, 2, 4, 6, 8. So we got 12 out of 1 piece. So that's not bad. So that would be, maybe if you do 3 per serving, that gives you math, 4 servings. Yeah, right. And you could have a nice seasoning. I think especially now in the summer, it's grill time, right? So maybe moving away from things like stir fries and trying to do something that's a little nicer of a grill. Have one that's just a nice peppercorn seasoning. Have one that's in like an Asian marinade, and then have one that's more herby. Like do a trio mixture. I think could be a great idea for that. So yeah,
awesome.
So that's all the goodies we have.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Taryn.
You're welcome.
There's so much great tips and ideas here. It's unbelievable. So thanks again for everything.
Good. You're welcome. Did you have any other questions or anything today?
Doesn't look like it, but okay, you know what? Cool. Thanks again, and tune in to more of The Little Butcher as we have Taryn back later this summer. But thanks again. And tomorrow we're back with SVK with more shows. We got a huge show tomorrow on the food inflation and really learning what's happening with food prices and what you should do. So it's really that simple. So anyways, Taryn.
Interesting. Yeah. Thanks,
yeah, it
Jay.
should be really good. Thanks again. Yeah. And to everyone else, tune in. We're live every week. So take care. Thanks so much.